Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Payoff.
Welcome to an all-new episode of The Payoff. I'm Tom. That's Jeff. Jeff, how the hell are you doing?
Feeling good, man. You know, I'm excited. Finally, after it feels like months, we are out of WrestleMania. And so, now we're kind of mixing it up a little bit, covering some stuff we weren't able to cover. And so I'm excited.
We covered WrestleMania for what felt like 6 months.
It really does. I know. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. There's lots to talk about, and there's still going to be lots to talk about next Mania season. But now we got a fun couple of weeks ahead here. I'm excited.
Yeah, it was just like, I got to tell you, the other day, I think when I was getting ready for this episode, I just saw like the WrestleMania logo on Peacock. And I was like, man, I'm kind of burned out with like WrestleMania. I don't need to watch another WrestleMania match. I don't need to hear about WrestleMania. But of course, we're using WrestleMania Backlash. So I'm like, you just can't avoid this thing. I'm like, I need a break from WrestleMania for, let's just say, until January. I don't want to hear about it again.
Well, and like you said, funny enough, this week is Mania Backlash. And so we've got one more week of dealing with that. I do like the rebranding on that. I think it is smart, but also like, enough. Like, let's move on. And so, but we got a lot of different shows coming up after that.
Well, and a lot of people on Twitter do not like the WrestleMania Backlash name. I think it's smart to leverage the brand, and it makes it feel bigger than just, oh, we're going to have the rematch pay-per-view. And I know that's kind of what ends up happening, but I actually like the branding, and I think it makes it a little bit bigger. And I commend them for, again, it's not all home runs, but I commend them from trying to create the best 12, premium live events that they possibly can. And God, you look at the summer and it's like, so we're going to the Raiders Stadium, the Titans Stadium. We're going over to the UK, another Saudi show that'll be loaded. That's 4 straight months where they're going to be putting on WrestleMania quality cards. And the beauty of them, I'll tell you, the beauty of them getting $1 zillion from Peacock, and the beauty of them, trying to fill big stadiums, they can't fuck around. You can't throw some bullshit show up there. I mean, you got to bring in the big guns. You got to, load up these cards. I mean, you got to go balls to the wall. And I think it makes the product a hell of a lot better than the dark days when, they had no competition. They were running B shows with, like Bradshaw on top. I mean, God love the guy, but I mean, they've come a long way.
Well, in a 4-week period over June, we've got Double or Nothing, Hell in a Cell, Money in the Bank, and the newly announced AEW New Japan Forbidden Door, which will then take us into SummerSlam a month after that. So
and keep in mind, this is during the stretch of the time where usually it's wrestling's dead.
Yes.
Right. Oh, the April, May, June, July, it's beyond dead. And now it's going to be loaded. I mean, you could argue that the second quarter of the year is going to be better than the first quarter. The first quarter, is generally awesome. So we're in the moment. We're in the moment, and it's tough to appreciate the moment. Wrestling's as good as it's ever been.
Well, in September, we've got recently announced premium live event in the UK. And so they're going back there for that too. So like when you look at it, like, I know people shit on wrestling a lot, but again, if you can't find something to like, it's your own fault at this point, because like WWE has been, I feel like they've been trying. There's been some good shows lately, and same with like, there's a lot to look forward to with everybody in wrestling, no matter what you're looking for. So
no question. Why are we covering this match?
So I have picked over the next month or so Tom and I are going to be covering. We got just some fun matches in here that I'm going to say they kind of got lost in the cracks of like the WrestleMania season. It might be something that, we've kind of talked about a little bit. It might be something that, by the time we're able to, we're so focused on WrestleMania though over those couple of weeks that we're not able to get to some of these matches that we want to. And this is one that was kind of right on the cusp of when it aired. It was the middle of April. And so, when we're getting this episode out to you a little bit after that and things like that. So wanted to make sure that we kind of I went back into our archives to see, okay, what do we need to cover here? What's some of the matches that you and I have overlooked? And so that's what we really got for like the next couple of weeks is what are the matches that we're like, man, because we're so focused on WrestleMania, we didn't cover this. Well, it's time to cover some of those matches. And that's why we're here today.
Love it. And I can tell you, obviously you sent me the schedule. We are loaded coming up. And again, they're just unique ones. Some of these you're like, I didn't remember that happening, or, oh, I heard that was good, but shit, I don't even know if I've ever seen it. And if I did, it was 5 years ago. So without any more bullshitting back and forth, let's get into the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
So we're here at Spring Stampede. We're in the WCW hotbed of Denver, Colorado. 7,000 in attendance, April 19th, 1998. The tagline is the biggest, the baddest, no bull. Okay. Yeah. And they kind of had the Stampede theme going. Not the strongest branding of the WCW pay-per-views. Let's just leave it at that. Man, what an interesting card. You talk about throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. The thing with WCW and I think one of their biggest challenges was they didn't always put on the best pay-per-views. You had a lot of older guys on bigger guaranteed contracts that, there's so many things I just laugh at that, Vince McMahon gets knocked about or whatever. But the reality is, his roster and of course the AEW now, these guys work harder because they're financially incentivized for it. In WCW, Hulk Hogan got paid whether he put on a 5-star match or a 1-star match. So what was the reasoning behind him trying to have a barn burner of a match? There was none. And the same for Nash and the same for the Giant and the same for the Steiners and Buff Bagwell and everyone else. So, you just got these shows where, they just went through the motions. They had a standard wrestling match. Meanwhile, you have guys on Vince's roster, like a Steve Austin, like a Mick Foley, that, the quantity of the paycheck is dependent on how many asses they put in seats and how good the show was. It's somewhat objective, but it's somewhat subjective. And, you look at Hulk Hogan, 4 years later, he's having better matches in WWE. Why? Because he was trying. Because it was about his legacy at that point. And he knew Vince would have a bigger payday for him if he hit a home run. So, it led to some just, kind of poorly booked, poorly wrestled WCW pay-per-views. And I think this is an example of it. But the talent's there. There's no question. You had Goldberg, who, up and coming at this point, defeating Perry Saturn, Ultimo Dragon defeating Chavo Guerrero Jr., Booker T defeating Chris Benoit to keep his TV title, Kurt Hennig defeating the British Bulldog. Obviously, both past their prime, not a good match. But again, the star power on this show, my goodness. Chris Jericho defeating Prince Iaukea to keep his cruiserweight title. Rick Steiner and Lex Luger defeating Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell. Buff, man, he's been all over Twitter lately, huh?
A busy guy, absolutely. Trying to get his life together. Good for him.
Yeah,
friend of the payoff.
Yeah, it's good to see. Psychosis defeating La Parka. Hogan and Nash as a tag team defeating Roddy Piper and the Giant in a baseball bat on a pole match. Not often you see those guys, especially Hogan, working third from the top. Then we get the match we're going to cover. Raven, DDP, U.S. heavyweight title. And then the main event, Randy Savage and Sting. Randy Savage would beat Sting to win the WCW World Heavyweight title in a no DQ match. I didn't remember that match happening. You talk about how bad they butchered Sting. They build this guy up for 18 months, and this is the bullshit that they have him doing. So really only two good matches on the show, the Ultimo Dragon Chavo Guerrero Jr. match, and then the match we're going to cover. The rest of it, pretty poor. Benoit Booker did okay. Jericho IK did okay. But again, not the best, the best representation of WCW. And again, let's just set the time frame, not just for this, but really the next 3 episodes of the payoff. This is when Vince and Austin are catching fire. We've ended the 83 weeks of WCW beating WWE in the Monday Night Wars. WCW is starting to fall apart. You got a legal situation with Ric Flair. You've got morale really, really low. Jeff, you had a bunch of WCW wrestlers at an ECW house show in Philly openly talking about how they wanted out of their contracts. Jericho, Malenko, Guerrero, Meng, Scotty Riggs, Scott Hall, all going to ECW house shows to just bitch and moan and talking about when their deals are up. Benoit saying, hey, November 99, I am out as quickly as I can. Funny little side note from there. Scott Hall went to a ECW house show in Florida. I guess he gets a ride or takes a cab there, gets into an argument with a bunch of the ECW originals. But Tommy Dreamer didn't know what happened and gave Scott Hall a ride home. So again, one of the many examples of how sometimes the behind the scenes is a hell of a lot more interesting than what's happening in front of the curtain. But Jeff, it's funny. I look at this show and I'm like, man, was this show really worth, $30 when there's, ECW and WWE pay-per-views going on as well? According to Meltzer's readers, 91% thumbs up. So this was actually a really well-regarded show, believe it or not.
I almost find it interesting because even you reading off the names of kind of who was involved in this one, I was just kind of like, God, like how were they not still beating WWE? Like, these are some of the top names ever in wrestling on this card alone. I think you swap the kind of finishers on this one, but I get why Savage Sting was the main event because that's just how it was at that time. It's like, it wasn't going to be anybody else in the main event, outside of, in Hogan's kind of circles and things like that. But man, it's just crazy. Like this was a really well laid out card in regards to who was involved in this one. And so, and some long storylines too. And so that's a big part of this of like how, getting to this match and kind of what happened was it really, DDP had a lot of back and forth with members of the NWO. And so he was actually like the year prior, he had been asked to join the NWO, had a long run at this point as a face as well too. Hall and Nash getting diamond cutters. Like this was all the way back in January of 1997. And so kind of, that had been a big part of his storyline that Macho Man as well too, trying to recruit him. And then, we all know the iconic kind of getting the NWO spray painted on him or DDP. And so just kind of, huge moments in that. It was actually the Spring Stampede the year prior to this in 1997 when DDP had his first, I say main event or, really kind of big main event in WCW. Up until this point, you and I have talked about this before. 1996 in WCW pay-per-views was dominated by Hulk Hogan. Like he was in every main event practically, over 75% of them. Same with this first part of 1997. So this Spring Stampede 97, the year prior to this, when him and Savage had a match, that was his first kind of big, main pay-per-view. We'll talk during the match about whether he got the push he deserved and, all that and stuff like that. So, so he had been, kind of back and forth with Savage and kind of dealing with that. He also had where he was teaming up with, Kurt Hennig as well too. So just constantly, all these storylines with him involved in the NWO. And so, that kind of, eventually it started kind of, fizzling out and he kind of getting into some other things and things like that. So, where you started to see these guys, Raven and DDP, having match. It was uncensored 1998. You had a triple threat falls count anywhere match. It was Benoit, Raven, and DDP, with DDP putting Raven through a table with a diamond cutter to actually retain the belt on that one. And so these guys, like I said, a little bit, Page had really been feuding with the NWO, but starting to get those little, signals of going to have something with Raven as well too. Now Raven's kind of storyline as well too wasn't always around in WCW at this point, as we know, kind of his, we've talked about it before on the show, but coming over from ECW, I say free agent, but the big quote, of course, was the man who's been a champion with other organizations. Him sitting in the front row, being there, kind of the flock coming together as well too, or the Ravens, whatever it was being called at the time, and the different people. So we will see during this match that we get some of that. So we'll kind of call that out of who we're seeing and things like that. But eventually, of course, among probably at least I would say top two, commissioners or president of the company, James J. Dillon, of course, up there with the, some of the great Jack Tunney and things like that. Giving him Raven a contract because he was a free agent, if you will, whether we were, not always using that terminology as much back then, but that Raven could have his matches under his own rules, of course, getting into the Ravens rules, kind of matches, which was no DQ, weapons were allowed, double teaming out. Pretty much it was anything goes in some of these matches. And so, and the flock continued to grow at this point too. And so, Raven, though, he actually, while it was over August that he kind of started, having, matches that would have been unsanctioned. He ended up, it was actually not until Nitro of October 27th where he had his kind of, big kind of TV debut with that, or really his Nitro debut, beating Scotty Riggs on that one. And so Scotty Riggs, refusing to be a member of the flock. He would eventually join the flock. And then of course that match, like I was talking about with DDP, Benoit and Raven happening. So while there was not a ton of build to this story, like they had kind of been in each other's universe. There was, the flock and all, the big parts of that being involved with this and trying to, move this story forward. So like, as you see, we will see some outside action because of the Ravens Nest rules. So I do want to wonder, why is there so many people? This is why. And so, but yeah, just kind of,
just a trigger warning. There will be outside interference for you. So those of you wrestling purists that wanted a straight match, you are going to get shenanigans.
There will absolutely be shenanigans in that one. So that's really it. That's all I got. I say, let's get into this one.
Cool, man. Well, one Hall of Famer and another, I think, Hall of Famer. There's a lot of ECW guys that still need to go in the Hall of Fame, but it'll be fun. Van Dam was great. Obviously, Heyman will go in, or Raven should have no problem being in the Hall of Fame. Tommy Dreamer. So a lot of guys that I look forward to getting into the Hall of Fame. So it's funny every year at the Hall of Fame, I think like, okay, how many more guys can they find to put in? But there's a lot of guys that still need to be in there.
A lot. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, 207 mark of Spring Stampede 1998, season 1, episode 1 for those of you on Peacock. Spring Stampede 1998, 207 mark. Jeff, are you ready?
Season 3, episode 1. Yep.
Sorry.
That's all right. We got this.
We're recording this early in the morning.
It's our first time doing this. We'll be all right.
All right. It's time for the payoff.
Oh, it's time for the payoff.
Live on WCW Monday Nitro from Colorado Springs. Back we go to our ring announcer. Introducing the challenge.
So the place is packed. It was actually a sellout of 7,000 just based on this building. I didn't realize that, but they did a really good gate. And, even though WCW might not, be at the height of its popularity, man, they're still making a hell of a lot of money. And it took a long time for, things to really change. That would happen later on.
Great stage setup.
Yeah, really. It really is. So the whole Stampede thing is, I guess like a Western thing. They had some wood, like I like those wood planks.
I saw that too. Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty cool. You got the flock sitting ringside.
Kidman, young Billy Kidman. Yep.
Yeah. Pretty good set though. I really like it. But again, why this happened often with WCW, but they'd have like a theme pay-per-view and they do it in a weird spot. Like, Bash at the Beach should be at the beach. Spring Stampede should be, I don't know, somewhere that people do Western type things, but I don't know.
I want to point out real quick. So the match, DDP was in the ring. And so Raven kind of came into the ring with the belt. And this was Sick Boy who grabbed DDP from behind. Do you know the story of Sick Boy, Tom? I did some research into this one.
I don't, but Sick Boy interference sounds like the Jackass interference with all the characters.
Absolutely. So Sick Boy, real name Robert Vick. Which,
man, they're coming out hot, by the way.
They really are. Yeah.
That ring.
A lot of denim in this match. DDP wearing jeans, Raven with his standard jean shorts on. Yeah.
So Sick Boy, aka also known as Robert Vick, was eventually signed with the World Wrestling Federation. You may recognize that name because Bruce Pritchard actually said on his podcast that this Sick Boy was actually supposed to be a part of the Katie Vick storyline, which is why her name was actually Katie Vick.
Wow.
And because he had wrestled such poor matches and just could not get over, Vince decided to give the storyline to Kane and Triple H instead. And so Robert Vick missed out on, one of the best storylines ever with Katie Vick and for so for better or worse. Yeah. So a little bit of trivia there for you. Who is Sick Boy? That is why. So
that's a deep cut. That's pretty good.
You're welcome, man. And
these guys are coming out hot. I mean, they're just beating the shit out of each other and they haven't stopped yet.
Yeah,
real stiff.
Huge. And Raven, big fan, you're big fan of, or for, Tom and I both been on the show a few times as well, too. We've got another episode with him eventually here coming up, with him, one of his matches again as well. He was my WCW NWO video game character. I was always a big fan of Raven. I don't know about you, but DDP too. I feel like these guys, I thought the Diamond Cutter was such a cool finisher.
Well, yeah, Diamond Cutter's great. Raven had that different look. I mean, what a cool look. I'm just very, very impressed so far with the match. Fans super into it. Meltzer loved this show. He said on paper it looked like it was going to suck, and it turned out to be a really good show. Said best Sting match in a long time that Randy Savage got out of him.
Yeah. So these guys now they're up again, kind of no DQ, ref bump a little bit, but he's okay. They're climbing the set. There's like an old wagon carriage that DDP's on top of.
It's the second dive DDP's done off of something pretty impressive.
That was good. And they've got a bunch of hay bales on the ground, and so that's what he kind of a poorly looking elbow hitting Raven at that point. Wow. Yeah. So they're going after that set. They just threw him into the guardrail. Man, this is some good stuff, man. And then what was it? It was the following year, wasn't it? Wasn't it Spring Stampede 99 where DDP and Savage had that banger that we covered? I would have to double check here. 99 spring. Yes. No, that was a different pay-per-view. Different pay-per-view. Yep. Okay. Yeah. They had that. They also beat the shit. So it was just a good place for, DDP was in these kind of matches, I think. Absolutely. Yeah. And this was one, I kind of saw this not too long ago, but it was on Reddit and they were asking who are some of the wrestlers that could barely not get over, but were incredibly successful. And one of the top comments was Raven on this one, that the guy he always very rarely had a bad match. Oh yeah. Jeez. Kind of missed the table there. That's the WCWWrestling.com setup. I think they broadcast audio of the shows, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, they have their own booth set up. And I think that Mark Madden did a lot of stuff on there, but they're destroying that set. It. That's good stuff. Yeah. Really good stuff. I'm sorry. What were you? But yeah, as far as Raven getting over. Well, so if you just say, hey, yeah, who are guys that, again, were obviously well pushed. They, maybe a U.S. champion intercontinental type, but they just never, got to that main event level. Yeah. Raven's a great example. Could you see Raven being like an alternative, kind of world champion in either promotion? Yeah. Why the hell not? So I thought one of the comments said Raven was his generation's Jake the Snake, too talented to not succeed, which I thought that was like really well put. Like, whether it's Jake, but like really is so talented. They said Raven may not have been a main eventer in WCW, but he was damn good in the upper mid card. His title feuds with DDP and Benoit were great. And the Flock was an incredible stable that we may not see again. WWE just completely dropped the ball with him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Vince hated the look. I mean, look at the guy. He's got a cut off, raggedy t-shirt, raggedy jean shorts that are frayed. He wasn't the easiest person to get along with per se. I mean, he wasn't just going to nod his head and say, yes, sir. I mean, he wanted creative say, and, sometimes it just doesn't mesh. I mean, you forget that it's $1 billion corporation, and yeah, these wrestlers are eccentric characters, but look, if you're Vince McMahon, who do you trust? Do you trust John Cena, Roman Reigns, The Miz, or do you trust Raven? Mm-hmm. Right? I'm just saying, who are you going to put on the radio interviews? Who are you? I mean, you're Disney. Like, who are you going to trust? And so that's, sometimes I think we forget about that. How does Cena, end up with a 10-year run, championships all the time? Because Vince could count on him. We just recently celebrated Randy Orton's 20 years in the company, and, Randy Orton, team player now, but he was an asshole for a long period of time, and you couldn't always trust him. And, there's, if you look at it, and I think it's gotten better over the years, but if you look at it, traditionally you haven't always been able to trust everyone that, hey, this guy's going to show up. They're going to work hard. They're going to have a good attitude. They're going to be respectful of whatever booking they're giving. They're going to be clean and sober. I mean, you start going down the list, and, between the guys that had an attitude problem, the guys that had a drug problem, and the guys that got hurt all the time, not everyone was super dependable. And so that's where, when Vince, even to this day, when they find people that are dependable, that's what happens. You look at a guy like Cody Rhodes, and Jeff, he wears a suit. He's got a great attitude. That's a guy where Vince is like, I can put this guy on Good Morning America, and he's going to represent our brand really, really well. That's why he's going to be a world champion. That's why Roman. That's why, the conversation was, why is The Miz still around? I mean, people that don't like The Miz, I'm like, the guy's a star.
I don't know how you don't like him. Yeah.
But yeah, he has to be an integral part of your company in all aspects for many, many years. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this was great. The literal kitchen sink getting handed to Raven from Sick Boy, who was on the outside, and he was just a little bit ago hit DDP with it. He also has the bull rope it was tied around him. Oh yeah, and so kind of a drop toe hold onto the sink now from DDP to Raven, which was a great little move there. I find it was comical too. Like who's the dependable guy? No matter how you feel about Roman, and I know you and I have both he's come around on us a little bit here, but like you sent me recently that picture of the last 2 years of premium live events. Like, yeah,
I mean, he's main evented every show, and it's just been against everyone on the roster. And I have no problem with it. Am I ever going to feel the way about Roman Reigns that I feel about Steve Austin or Shawn Michaels or Hulk Hogan? No. But man, guy's a star, and he looks really good, and he's going to be acting at some point, and you can put him in a suit on any, television show, and he can host Saturday Night Live. And, he's the closest thing to The Rock that you've had since The Rock. Okay.
So you got Kidman trying to get involved here. He missed what was it? A frog splash. DDP rolled out of the way, and he hit Raven instead. So that was a great little move.
You got that. What condition is the winner?
Yeah, and I think like Roman's going
to. They just announced that the winner has to wrestle Goldberg tomorrow night on Nitro.
Have fun. Yeah, and I think there's Sick Boy again with a crutch. There you go, hitting DDP again.
1, 2.
Oh.
Oof, barely. Yep.
I mean,
I do think Roman keeps the belt until next Mania, because again, and I've seen this actually outside of like the wrestling posts, like Deadspin and a couple other places have posted like nobody beats Roman. Like they have built nobody to the point where that he could beat him.
Can he roll up 1, 2?
Small package there. Nope, couldn't get it.
Yeah, I don't know who and when. I mean, I saw some people say, hey, Drew at the UK show, which,
maybe.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I the reason I like that is because Drew didn't, he didn't get to win the big one in front of a audience, but I don't know. I guess I find anyone hard to believe. And then you say, oh, he's got to hold it until next Mania. Well, what? So what? The Rock can beat him? Let's get that young guy over and give him the rub. I mean, the Rock's not, and the Rock wouldn't allow it. He'd be like, I'm not going to, so I don't know.
I just don't see them taking it off. So we got, again, more members of the flock getting involved. DDP, why
can't DDP get some help?
A freaking ninja in the ring too, just avoiding all this interference, like Raven taking a beating from the flock. Like, this is ridiculous. And so, low blow allowed. Yep.
Calling for more help.
Yep.
Everybody. It's funny. I was thinking about those WCW guys who were backstage at ECW and all these guys bitching. And look, I love. Wow,
this is a big guy. Jesus,
that has to be it.
1, 2.
Looking strong as hell. DDP.
And every member.
I don't think too.
A 7-foot guy dressed as Raven.
I don't think too we respect it until like kind of his later in life, like just how smart of a guy DDP is. Like, getting to
both these guys
getting tossed a stop sign, but DDP blocking
into it. Fans standing up.
They're standing. Yeah. DDP cleaning up shop with the stop sign now. That was Horace as well too. Look at this.
That was Sick Boy that went down. Now Kidman.
Ooh, what a nice little move there. He had Kidman on his back. He kind of popped him up.
Who's that?
They hit him with the diamond cutter.
Who in the world?
There's the even flow. The DDT.
1, 2, 3. Oh, we got a new champion.
He won the title. Who is that guy?
I saw him out here earlier as a grip. I didn't see. I've never seen him. No, pulling camera cables.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
All kinds of stuff.
What a great match.
I think even the fans were surprised that it was the finish. Like I was too. Like, there was no reaction because I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, that was a great match though. But I've seen this criticism of WCW many times. They didn't exactly know how to book match finishes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
What a great match though.
Good stuff. Okay.
Well, last thing I wanted to say is, those guys going, WCW guys going to the ECW locker room and bitching and all the bitching that was happening in WCW at the time. I know Eric Bischoff pontificates on his podcast every week about, all the things that he'd do differently in today's landscape and how great he did back in the day. And I like the guy a lot, but I will tell you that, he was not Vince McMahon when it came to leading the locker room. And, when you have a whole bunch of employees that are bitching and moaning about the employer, when you're making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, he just was not a great leader in the sense like a Vince McMahon is. And you could say, oh, Vince is an asshole, Vince is this, Vince is that. But people respected the hell out of him. They weren't going behind his back, bitching and moaning, trying to get out of their contracts.
Right. Yeah. And we'll talk about that in the locker room meeting in a second here. So, yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, let's get into the aftermath.
Oh, it's time for the aftermath.
All right. Initial thoughts. What'd you think?
They kept, and I know this is in the reviews here, but after watching the match now, I agree with this sentiment. They kept, while DDP lost, they kept him real strong. Fighting off everybody. That the kind of last person who they didn't know kind of came into the ring. That was actually Horace. Also Horace.
I thought so. Okay. Was that his debut?
That was his debut. The nephew of the one and only Hulk Hogan. Yes. And so joining the flock at that point as well too. So very, interesting, but yeah, I thought overall, it was nonstop and, a little bit crazy, a little bit hectic, but it worked. And I thought it was pretty good stuff.
I really liked it. I think I just like both those guys. So yeah, I thought it was excellent.
Well, and so, like you said, them announcing that Bill Goldberg gets a shot at the title the next night. Of course, unfortunately for Raven, only holding the belt for 24-ish hours, losing it to Goldberg at that point. And then as well too, this is when the flock as well started to break up. He actually blamed that loss against Saturn, or kind of put it on the flock, which then Saturn, and who's a member of the flock at the time, and Raven having a match at Fall Brawl. And so and the stipulation with that one is that if Raven lost, the flock would be disbanded. And so Saturn ended up winning, of course. And so with the help of Billy Kidman on that one, who, as we saw, involved in this match as well too. And so they were able to leave. And so he had as I had forgotten about this one, there was a short-lived stable of the Deadpool, which was him, Vampiro, and the Insane Clown Posse, very short-lived. And then it kind of from there, though, of course, it was the, as we all know, much talked about backstage meeting of Eric Bischoff saying, if anybody wants to go, they can go. And Raven went. And so, getting his release, and he was out of there because of the direction they were heading and what they were doing. And just not a fan. So, so that was interesting. Now, DDP on this one, I feel like he got the better end of this deal, even though he lost this match. He ended up having, whether you agree with these matches or not, some very highly publicized matches. You had the Karl Malone and him tag teaming to take on Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman, which, no matter how you feel about that one, great concept. Bash at the Beach is that one. And then you had him, lesser, well respected or liked, him teaming with Jay Leno as well too. At Road Wild eventually too, to take on and beating Hogan and Eric Bischoff. And so, and then Page as well too, actually winning War Games that year as well too at Fall Brawl, getting a shot against Goldberg at the Halloween Havoc, the following pay-per-view. He didn't win that one, but that was actually voted the match of the year in WCW for 1998 in the WCW magazine. And so, kind of interesting. That was also the pay-per-view. Unfortunate. Well, it was the match of the year that had the run over. And so we weren't all able to see that match. And so hopefully you caught Nitro the next night where you were actually able to win or, kind of view that match. And so, and that was actually the last win Nitro ever had over Raw. Wow. And so, crazy thing, what could have happened and things like that. But overall, good stuff. So where we're at with the rankings on this one, DDP in 1998 was number 4. Raven 61, I feel like kind of low. Maybe that was just kind of how, he was treated at the time. And Meltzer's, like you said, scientific ratings behind him, just not a big fan of this one. And so wanted just the kind of random kind of write-ups I found on this one, not from our sites we normally use. The match was overbooked with all the run-ins, but it was still a great match. All the flock came in at different times to hit Page, but he fought them all off. This is the definition of looking strong in defeat. There were weapons and wild stuff the whole time, but the numbers game became too much for Page. Horace debuting here as a member of the flock was fine, although at that point it seemed a bit excessive. Raven and Goldberg were one of the more memorable matches in Nitro history, and this was the precursor to that. I thought this match was awesome either way. So the torch on this one gave it 3.5 stars. Raven and DDP deserve credit for a good brawl and a smooth move with the other Bolia, referencing Horace and his last name. And the Observer newsletter, like you said, it was kind of all over the board. This match barely squeaked out the best match of the night at the Observer newsletter poll with 34 votes versus that Ultimo Dragon Chavo Guerrero match that we talked about coming in at 32. So 34 to 32 on that one. And so this show featured 2 of the 3 best pay-per-view matches thus far this year. A great ball between DDP and Raven, where Raven captured the U.S. title, and a surprisingly great match with Ultimo Dragon, the smoothest wrestler on the planet, and the rapidly improving and hilarious Chavo Guerrero. A wild brawl all over the place with tons of interference, basically using every shortcut in a world match. 4 stars. So 4 stars, 3.5 stars. Tom, where are you feeling on this one?
I'll give this a.
I'll go first.
Go ahead. I think I have my number in my head.
I'm going to give it a 6.5 because I'm with I agree with the overbook. There was a lot happening. So I think in regards to being a wrestling match, there wasn't a whole lot of that because it was a lot of just the spots and things like that. So, but the wrestling it was very good. It started hot before anybody kind of got involved. And I thought that was fantastic. And I thought they told a pretty good story. I think that, the kind of the flock and the angle that they were going with and kind of, you're kind of working in two worlds on that one. Of you were trying to eventually get to the point where you were breaking up the flock. And then you were also working in the world of like, okay, you knew DDP had a lot of big stuff coming up. And so you couldn't have him lose clean on this one because you had the Karl Malone stuff. You had the Jay Leno stuff. Now, whether that was that booked that far out, who knows? But I think that, they made everybody kind of came out of this looking good, going into their next storylines, but also it's still kind of lacking a little bit. And so that's why, I'm going to give it probably closer to 6.25, but I'm going to give it a 6.5 just because I'm a big Raven and DDP fan.
Yeah, I feel like I've been too generous with my my scores lately. That's why I had a little trepidation.
I'm not going to lie. I had the same thought too. I wanted to back it off a little bit. Yep.
All right. You got me from like a 7 or a 7.5 down to a 6.5. I'm going to call it a 6.5. I gotta stop being so generous with these things. Maybe all the WrestleMania nostalgia, made me a little soft, but let me give this one a 6.5, Jeff. But I mean, I really liked it. Really good brawl, fun match. Love both these guys. Didn't really stop, which I like. I just like give me 12 minutes nonstop as opposed to 20 minutes of rest holds. And I know that's bad, but that's how I feel. So, anyways, that's 6.5 final answer.
No, and I'm with you. And our site, we're blowing up our algorithm right now. I hope everybody doesn't kind of freak out too much about that. So I'm interested too. I did go back and I'll put it on our list, that Perry Saturn Raven match, because we always thought like this was really a stepping stone for for that match. That got 3.5 stars. That was actually the highest rated match at Fall Brawl 1998. The main event on that one was Team WCW versus NWO Wolfpack. Which he ended up giving a -4 stars. And so that should be one that maybe we could go back. But so the payoff to this Raven Saturn kind of flock feud was a fairly decent match in his eyes on what looks like a very terrible card. So, yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Good stuff.
Very, very good one. This was a good find on your part. I'm glad we covered it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Fun one. Absolutely. Cool.
All right. Well,
send them home happy, my friend.
Well, next week we're covering a good one. I remember watching this match live. I love this match. Dude loves Steve Austin Falls Count Anywhere at In Your House Over the Edge. So I'm pretty pumped about that one.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. We'll see everyone next week on an all new episode of The Payoff.